Welcome to Authbition. It's authenticity and ambition. It's the best of the best, bringing together vulnerability, non-attachment, caring, thoughtfulness, and whole-mindedness. This week, I want to continue to explore the topic of whole-mindedness. This is something that I define as holding two tensions, trying to find the best of the best of two tensions while avoiding the worst of the worst. And a tension is something that we might consider a this or that choice. And we face these black and white, yes or no, up or down, left or right, this or that thinking happens all the time, every day. They could be small choices that we're making throughout daily life. Do we want to go to this restaurant or that one? They could be, huge life decisions. Do I keep this job or maybe start a business, right? So they're small decisions, they're huge things, and the whole mind game is a way to find the best of the best. So today I'm gonna talk about a podcast that I listened to last week, which I found really interesting, and it gave me an opportunity to play the whole mind game and also read an essay that's about work-life balance, which is just more about how this type of non-dualistic thinking shows up in my writing. And so I want to start with this podcast that I listened to last week. It was Modern Wisdom, episode 952, and the guest is Alex Hormozi. It was 4 hours long, really long. I don't typically take 4 hours to listen to a podcast. I listened to the first 20 minutes while driving somewhere. I forget where I was driving. And I thought, wow, man, I want to listen to this whole thing. I don't know where I'm going to find another, 3.5 hours to listen to it. But I had a bunch of stuff to do that was like overhead, paperwork, organizing papers, doing some chores around the house, dishes and things like that. And I listened to it, and it was a fascinating conversation. I've just recently discovered this Alex Hormozi guy. He's fun to listen to. So in this episode, near the end of the 4 hours, um, he's discussing how he's interested and has been interested in a long time in meditation and how meditation can improve happiness. And he's exploring this idea of meditating for up to 4 hours a day and how that could really transform how happy he is. Uh, he listened to that episode. He really gets into extreme detail about why meditation can have such a big impact on happiness. So I'm not going to get into all that. Um, but he described a tension, and the tension that he was discussing was that spending 4 hours a day does not feel useful. And so he had looked into this years ago and decided, I'm not going to spend 4 hours a day meditating because it's just I'm not contributing anything. I'd choose usefulness over happiness. So let's be useful instead. And I guess the guy's achieved enough in his life where he's reconsidering this, thinking, okay, maybe I can spend 4 hours a day meditating and still have enough time to contribute meaningful work to society, or whatever's going on in his head. I really don't know. I just thought it was fascinating that he was talking about happiness versus usefulness as this choice that he was making, and that right now he's coming into a time in his life where he thinks that maybe he can choose happiness and usefulness, that he can have both of those things. And so this is a perfect example of where we can use whole mind thinking to explore this tension of happiness and usefulness. It's cool to listen to, Alex on this podcast talk about, I'm discovering that, I can be both happy and useful, and it's cool. How, Alex, how are you, how exactly are you doing that? I have no idea how he's doing it. But I figured, hey, let's play the whole mind game. And so this game is uh, very simple, although it's a thoughtful game. The rules are simple. The rules of the game are you ask 6 questions, which is what's the best of tension one? What's the worst of tension two? What's the best of, sorry, I got that completely wrong. It's what's the best of tension one? What's the worst of tension one? What's the best of tension two? What's the worst of tension two? And then what's the best of the best? And what's the worst of the worst? The best of the best is a synergy. It's what we're trying to achieve. The worst of the worst is a trap. It's the shadow side. It's something to be avoided that looks a lot like the best of the best, and something that we can easily get sucked into when we're in a tension that we're looking to fulfill. Um, and really, the key of the game is playing it with another person. I've got a Chat GPT custom AI that I made to play a game, so you can do it alone. But honestly, I think it's better to do with another person, or a coach, or a group of friends. And it's really the reflection and trying to boil down the thoughts that you have about each question into a very short phrase or even one word if you can. Um, so I just want to show you what I went through. I went through this morning, and I thought it was a really interesting tension to explore. So again, happiness and usefulness. Can we have the best of the best of both of these things? This is a constructive tension. That means there are two strengths that are pulling in two different directions, and we kind of wish we could do both, but feel like we have to choose one. So I started off with happiness. What is the best of happiness? What's the gift, the power, the magic of happiness when it's truly present in our life? Um, and so my answer when I thought about it, I said, when if I think about having happiness, I think about being content. I'm content. So to me, that captured the heart of happiness. In a grounded way, it suggests peace, a sense of ease, and just a feeling of being enough. So I did this game with the ChatGPT coach that I made, and it gives an answer. I find its answers fascinating. It gave the answer radiance. Happiness at its best can light you up from within and spill outward. It uplifts not just your own experience, but the energy that you bring to others. So I answered content. The coach answered radiance. And so then we explored the shadow side. What's the worst of happiness? When happiness becomes distorted, overemphasized, or pursued blindly, what's that shadow side? And so my answer was disregard for others and unintended consequences. It points to how the pursuit of happiness can become self absorbed or short sighted, especially when it overrides awareness or impact. Um, so I said disregard for others and unintended consequences. The coach came back and added numb in indulgence, numb, NUMB indulgence, the kind of happiness that chases comfort at the cost of depth, meaning, or responsibility. Pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, so then we explored the other side, which is usefulness, and looking for the best of usefulness. When I'm truly useful in a deep and purposeful way, what's the highest good that offers? And I thought about it, and the answer that I came up with was it lifts the world around me. It lifts up the world around me. It raises all ships. It's being a voice and making the world a better place. Um, Lifting up the world is being part of something that's larger than myself. There's this, um, I don't know, it just feels good to be useful. It's about service. It's about intention. And so the coach came back, and its answer was purpose, usefulness that's aligned with what matters most, where your actions ripple outward in meaningful ways. So, what's the worst of usefulness? When usefulness is distorted, taken too far, or used to mask other needs, what would be the shadow side of that usefulness? And so I thought about this one, and my answer was loss of self, overworking to escape something that I don't want to face. Um, the loss of myself can use overwork as a shield. It can disconnect me from my truth. It can be a performance that acts as a prison. And the whole mind coach came back, and its answer was self erasure. When usefulness becomes so externalized that the inner voice goes silent and doing replaces being. Really interesting response. Uh, so now we're looking for the synergy. What's the best of the best? My answers um, for the best of happiness was contentment. The best of usefulness was lifting up the world. And so how do I put, this contentment and lifting up the world into a single word or phrase? And so after some thought, it takes time, by the way. It takes time to kind of work through these answers. So the way that I'm doing it now is like I've already come up with the answer. So it's maybe not doing it justice how much time it can take to go through this. Um, but my answer for the best of happiness, the best of usefulness, being content and lifting up the world was selfless leadership. Selfless leadership. It suggests someone who leads from a place of inner peace and not ego, and someone whose contentment fuels their service. It honors happiness as grounded presence and usefulness as generous action. Um, and then the coach offered its synergy phrase is joyful contribution, the feeling of offering something real to the world, not from obligation, but from wholeness. Um, all right. So, how about the shadow side? What's the worst of the worst? And my answers for each side of the tension were disregard for others, unintended consequences, and loss of self or overworking to escape. So, how do we put that like this disregard for others and unintended consequences, loss of self, overworking to escape into one word or phrase that names that pain? This one took me a while. Um, and my answer that I wrote down was pursuit of power and prestige at the expense of integrity and community. I'll read that one more time. This is exactly what I wrote. Pursuit of power and prestige at the expense of integrity and community. It captures how the hollow ache of achieving success while losing touch with what really matters, um, both within and around me. Um, and then the coach offered its answer, which was empty achievement. When the outside looks impressive, but the inside feels distant, disconnected, or quietly eroded. And so, just as a reflection, um, we began with this tension, happiness and usefulness, and we unearthed the best of the best, the synergy. What we're trying to achieve is this selfless leadership. And the worst of the worst, the trap, the thing that we want to avoid is the pursuit of power and prestige at the expense of integrity and community. And there's some ways we can do that. Uh, that we can make that actionable. One way is serve from overflow. not from depletion. So before giving to others, pause and check in with yourself. Is this action coming from fullness or from fear or avoidance? So that's one way to make it actionable. Another way to make it actionable: make space for stillness, build moments of reflection and rest, not as reward, but as fuel for clarity and deeper impact. And lead with heart, not just results. So choose impact that uplifts people, not just outcomes. Ask yourself, does this create dignity, not just efficiency? So that was my exploration of the whole mind game, from listening to Alex Hormozi talk about this tension that he feels between happiness and usefulness. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you can um, try out the whole mind game. I'll put the AI coach in the speaker notes so you can check it out. And I'm going to finish this episode by reading an essay that I wrote. It doesn't play the whole mind game. I wrote this before I made the game up, but it's still a story about um, finding the best of the best. It's still a story about synergy, about maximizing two opposing forces. And it's called A Lesson from the Mat in Work-Life Balance. I used to wish for more time. Now I do yoga. This is published in Namaste Now is the publication name, and it is a publication on Medium, and I'll share the original essay on in the speaker notes. And I'm going to go ahead and read it. I haven't done a straight reading of an essay in a couple of weeks, and I thought I'd like to get back to that. And so I'm going to read this one to you. I hope you enjoy it. And after I finish reading it, I'll wrap up the show for the week. So thanks for hanging in with me here. In 2009, I took a group of students on a field trip to a medical device company. It wasn't just any company, it was Ethicon, a division of Johnson & Johnson. When I arrived with a van full of ragtag college students who were all reliving summer camp bus vibes, I was nervous that they'd be an embarrassment. They were not. They behaved as respectful ambassadors of their institution upon entering the premises. More unexpected was the royal welcome we received from the team at Ethicon. The agenda included tours of their manufacturing facility, their design, and their testing facilities, with well-prepared talks about the reality of working in industry. It was an incredible experience for those students. I was blown away. As an entrepreneur, I couldn't imagine getting my startup company inside the walls of a J&J plant. This seemed like a secret hack. Up here, I'm just going to make believe I'm a college professor, and then I'm going to find a pack of students uh, to join me, and then we'll just like roll up to the facility, and they'll roll out the red carpet. um, this day I met who's now a good friend, Tony. He was the site leader and the director of R&D, and standing on the receiving line of that carpet. Um, I know now that it was he who set the tone for such a memorable workplace culture, at least as much as possible given the constraints of a large company. Some months later, Tony reached out and asked if I'd join their book club. They were reading an academic text from Stanford University on the topic of medical innovation. I can only imagine what he was thinking at the time. This is like Tony's thinking, we've got this professor over at NC State who's an expert in this stuff, and we're reading this book. Let's invite this guy. So that's what he did. He invited me over to be part of this book club. It's really cool. Meanwhile, I was thinking like an entrepreneur. I was like, man, I get to hang out weekly with a group of professionals at one of the largest medical device companies in the world. This is a no-brainer. This innovator wearing a professor cloak move is a really good hack. Um, so, what do the best medical device companies in the world do? I don't know. But what I do know is what the best leaders do, and they're intentional about the culture they create. What I witnessed was a culture of fellowship and learning. The book club met over lunch around a large table. We shared meals, experiences, takeaways, and insights. Tony and I would become family. After getting to know him over books and meals, I invited him to mentor students in a novel concept I had for a graduate class that brought together diverse students from business, engineering, medicine, and design. So the tables had flipped, and Tony was coming weekly into my world, the academic halls of a teaching hospital. This allowed students and me the rare opportunity to learn from a deeply experienced industry professional. I think Tony was equally interested in experiencing the innovation process and as an entire life cycle, from academic concept to startup. We had something to give and learn from each other, and our relationship didn't take long to evolve from relaxed friends to business partners on an entrepreneurial journey. Our weekly interactions in group settings grew into coffee and happy hours together, as if serendipitously, and that's easier to write than to read aloud, as if serendipitously, uh, things were changing for Tony. J&J was closing the local plant, and he'd been offered a relocation package to New Jersey. We're here in North Carolina. I don't know if you can tell. You can see it's this way, the Red Hat building behind me in downtown Raleigh. Uh, anyway, so what would he do? Is he going to displace his wife and his teenage girls for the security of a corporate job and move to New Jersey, or would he pursue this academic study of innovation turn that into a practice? Coffee and happy hour matured into business planning, and before long, we were on long drives and headed to conferences where we could maximize networking and consumer research for our startup. We shared hotel rooms to keep the costs down. We prepared presentations together. One of us would pitch while the other one took notes, and our feedback to each other was always honest and kind. Here, in the trenches of entrepreneurship, I witnessed Tony build a company culture from scratch. What he did best was ask thoughtful questions and listen. I find it hard to believe it's been 16 years. Tony went from an executive at a large company to an entrepreneur multiple times over. Today, we both serve as mentors to medical innovators, and while the road trips are fewer and further between, lunches and happy hours remain on the regular. One thing hasn't changed: Tony's questions and the deep conversation that ensued. That's the secret sauce. That's how Tony creates such an incredible company culture. He asks thoughtful questions, and he listens. And it's on this journey that I crossed the intersection I like to call pragmatic yoga. Tony's characteristic line of questioning would start with him digging into what I'm up to lately. I talk about riding my bike, meeting my girlfriend, adopting a rescue dog, planning a wedding, and I talked about my yoga practice. A classic Tony question was, how are you using that in your daily practical life? I'm thinking, yoga? Am I day to day? How much time do you have? I can talk all day about that. Yoga is a living demonstration of non-dualism. It's one thing to read about non-duality. It's another to stand in a pose and strive for some muscles to be fully engaged while others remain fully relaxed. A yoga pose is not a compromise between engagement versus relaxation. It's a living, breathing example of a full commitment to both. So Tony would say, okay, so how are you using that in your daily life? And I'm like, I'm gonna have to think about that. Um, in the wake of COVID-19, Tony was leading a startup company through the transition of coming back to work at an office. And he did what he does best. He started by asking his employees what they wanted in a work-life, personal life balance. And he listened. His team wanted to work from home because they enjoyed the flexibility. They could choose to work when they wanted, where they wanted, when and where they were the most productive. And for some, that may be on a couch at home in the evening. For others, it could be mid-morning at a crowded coffee shop. On the flip side, his team also valued meaningful professional relationships, the improved creativity and increased productivity from being together face to face. So this team valued work from home and work at an office as methods to increase productivity. Yet they were at odds with each other. This is just like the whole mind game before I came up with it. These were these two things at odds with each other, and these were, um, constructive tension. They're both good things. Hey, working from home is great. Working at the office is great. There's good things on both sides of that. So how would Tony resolve these competing priorities? He put pragmatic yoga to work and managed to maximize the flexibility of home and the benefits of the office. He reflected on our conversation and deepened his exploration into non-duality. Can flexibility and consistency exist together? Can the dueling benefits of working from home and from an office not only coexist, but coexist to their maximum potential? With input from his team, Tony created a weekly schedule that included the best of both worlds. It retains specific in-office days and times to maximize collaboration among the team and balance that with a relaxed work from anywhere, anytime schedule that maximized flexibility. I always come back to yoga. When I'm standing in a half moon pose, I'm not trying to compromise opposing forces. I want to maximize my leg, hip, and core muscle engagement and simultaneously fully relax. Tony asked, okay, so how are you using that in your daily life? When I feel like there's an imbalance in my work life and personal life, rather than compromise, I look to maximize. What's going well at work? Do more of that. What's performing nicely at home? What brings me joy? Do more of those things. Rather than minimizing what's not working, maximize what is. That's pragmatic yoga. Thank you for listening. Health, happiness, kindness, respect to every being and all things. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I look forward to joining you next week. Namaste.